we have had lots of challenges with individuals, particularly young people, wreaking havoc in the city as it relates to vehicles. But what's even more concerning about this particular one, all of them are concerning, but what's very concerning about this particular one is that we had a 13-year-old, a 14-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 14-year-old at 11:45 at night involved in robberies and car thefts. I want to thank our partnership. As you know, we have a strong partnership with the New York State Police, Monroe County Sheriffs, obviously our men and women in the Rochester Police Department. This just shows the dangers and perils of the job that they do and have to do every single day. These pursuits are dangerous. It's a blessing that no one was killed. The fact that we had to use spike strips to be able to stop this. And the fact that we had a partnership obviously helps us. And these are the partnerships that we have been talking about throughout this year, and this is proof positive of why these partnerships are so important. Before I turn it over to Lieutenant Bello, I want to say again to our larger community, it is often asked, what can government do? Here at the city and our partners, we're doing our part. We're arresting individuals that are perpetrating these crimes, that are disrupting people's lives, and we're trying to work to make sure that the individuals who are experiencing the hardships of having cars stolen or vehicles smashed for no apparent reason. In some of these instances, people just think it's okay to take a hammer and smash a car, not taking anything. We're doing our part to make sure that we get these individuals off the street and try to get them help. But I think that there's a larger conversation that we have to have in this community about where families and systems play as it relates to these what we call incidences that ravage our community. Because at 11:45 at night, we should not have 12-year-olds in stolen cars. At 11:45 at night, we should not have kids in stolen cars. It's dangerous. It leads to death, and we have seen many situations in which too many of our young people have been injured, and now we know killed because of these situations. So I want to have the lieutenant give you an update on what happened, and then we'll take some questions on this and then any other topics that you might have.
So just to recap what occurred last night. So just before midnight, we responded to one of the downtown coffee shops for the report of a robbery. The robbery did not occur at the coffee shop, but what happened is that there was two adult males. They were in the area of East Main Street and St. Paul Street when they alleged that a vehicle, a Hyundai, pulled up to them. At least 5 or 6 juveniles got out of the car, threatened them with a hammer, and then stole property from them before getting back in the car and taking off in the car. They then went to a nearby coffee shop in order to call 911 and report it, which gave us probably about a 15-minute delay before our officers responded. But what we did is we conducted our initial preliminary investigation. We started looking through some potential evidence in the case, and ultimately, a little while later, about 12:30 or so, we were able to actually locate that Hyundai that was involved in it in the area of Dr. Samuel McCree Way. Our officers attempted to stop that vehicle on Dr. Samuel McCree Way. The vehicle took off from them. So we ended up, as part of a robbery, an armed robbery, met our pursuit criteria, and our officers engaged in a pursuit with that vehicle. That pursuit lasted about 45 minutes, going across both the east and west side of the city of Rochester. With the assistance from the Sheriff's Department, the State Police, this was quite an involved incident. Again, a pursuit going 45 minutes. Our officers were able to safely deploy spike strips on that vehicle, and ultimately that vehicle became disabled in the 200 block of Bartlett Street. Once that vehicle became disabled, 6 juveniles ran from that vehicle. We had foot chases with those juveniles, and ultimately we were able to take all 6 of them into custody. So as a result of that, we were actually able to charge 5 of them. The 6th one was not charged last night, but obviously investigation into potentially charging that juvenile is still under investigation. But the 5 that were charged, we had a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 14-year-old that were all issued appearance tickets to return back to Monroe County Family Court. We also had a 13-year-old, a second 13-year-old. He was transported to a juvenile detention facility. As part of that is because he served with a warrant for juvenile delinquency, which means he had not been participating in the family court process, and there was some reason that the judge had ordered him back to family court. And then finally, also the 16-year-old was transported to a juvenile detention facility as well. Same thing is that he had an outstanding warrant for juvenile delinquency. In addition, the mayor just talked about assisting families and families in need. That juvenile, the 16-year-old, was also listed with us as being a missing person that had run away from home, and the family had called us to try to report that, or had reported that juvenile missing. So those 5 are in custody. Again, 3 were released to their parents or family members, and the 2 were taken to the juvenile detention facility. The obvious question that comes up about it is with a hammer involved. And the mayor had mentioned we've been dealing a lot with vehicles being damaged, presumably with a hammer or some other instrument in the middle of the night, including last night, I believe 14 cars were damaged over on Boardman Street. We are still putting the pieces together, whether or not it's the same juveniles that are involved in it. It's easy to assume that if you put 2 and 2 together, it equals 4. But in our world, that it doesn't always equal that. Sometimes what we can prove and what we can't prove. So I don't want to jump to conclusions that it is the same juveniles, but obviously that's something our investigators are looking into and that we're going to continue to look into to ultimately hold them accountable if they are responsible for that.
The other point I want to make, and that is extremely important. So this pursuit lasted 45 minutes, which means that you had a 12-year-old in a stolen car across the city at like 12:30 in the morning. If you don't know, it is not a holiday today. School was in session. And as a parent myself of kids who are under the age of 18, I can tell you where my kids were. They were in bed. They were in bed. And that is where our young people should be at this time. They should not be out stealing cars or being involved in this negative behavior. I think it's important to note that we're going to continue to do our part. We're going to continue to work with our federal, state, and local partners. We get more support from New York State, from the New York State Police than just about any other municipality, because the governor has been very good to us in terms of the resources that she has provided for us as it relates to the state police. That's why in many of these incidences you see the state police. The sheriff's office, they have their stolen car detail that they have been very, very helpful with. Our GIVE detail is out regularly, making sure that they're tracking down guns. I think we're up to 600?
We just hit 606 guns the other day.
606 guns the other day that we have taken off the streets. 606 guns. For those that don't know, there's 365 days in the year. So that tells you how many guns that we've taken off the streets as it relates to this. So these are ongoing things. So we will do our part. I often say it's not me, but we. But in that we have to have families, we have to have friends, we have to have the community. I also want to say, anyone that has camera footage in your neighborhoods. Obviously, I'm the mayor. I have cameras all over the place by the nature of my job. But just about every house nowadays has cameras. If you have camera footage that you can send to us, even through the Reported app or to the police department, you can send it anonymously. If you have camera footage of individuals looking at cars, casing cars, we want to know. We want to know. Our police department is out regularly checking these things, but we cannot do this alone. We cannot do this alone. We cannot babysit people's children. That's not a role that the city plays. We can give resources to organizations that do that, but we cannot be held. We cannot take responsibility for a 12-year-old in a stolen car at 11:45 at night, going through neighborhoods. If families need help, we have the resources to help, and we've helped many. They can call the mayor's office, they can call the police department, and many of our community partnerships, as well as Monroe County and the JEDS program, which is a major partnership that we have. There are resources out there to be able to help, but at the end of the day, we are not going to tolerate this type of lawlessness that we have seen as it relates to individuals and cars. We saw a steep decline in stolen cars. We want to stay on that trajectory. We want to stay on that trajectory. And we also want to make sure that we keep people safe. But that can't happen if we have 12-year-olds out at 11:45 at night on 45-minute car chases, endangering not only themselves, but the citizens in our community. And with that, I will take any questions that you might have. Isabel.
Yes, Ms. Rayer, can you describe, first off, if it's able to be disclosed, who was at the wheel, particularly if it was the 12-year-old?
I don't think that can be disclosed right now in terms of the age. I think that's all part of the investigation, and they'll deal with that later. But I think the bigger issue is that whoever was at the wheel, was it a 16, 14, or 12, it was a stolen car. And they should not be riding around in a stolen car. And you had a 12-year-old that was in that car, which is extremely concerning.
And you mentioned that two of the teenagers were also listed as missing. And so in terms of that, or had been filed for missing persons, or if you can clarify just that element of it.
One person was, yes, the 16-year-old, right, was the family filed a missing persons report on the 16-year-old.
So clearly, and as you mentioned, you need the family, participation as well in that greater conversation. Where are the challenges there? Families are, you've mentioned too, also seeking this kind of help, but, what would be your message to families that feel like they don't know where to go and the kids are still engaging in this type of stuff?
I would say you have to go somewhere. If it's not a school counselor, then let it be. They can call into the mayor's office. We connect people to services all the time. They can call the county social services. They connect people to services all the time. The court system is also another place. In fact, the court system should play a role in this because many of these individuals, some of the names that were, we can't release the names because they're juveniles, but some of the people who Lieutenant Bello outlined, they had other charges and issues that they were doing. Where was our court system in making sure that they are doing the mandated treatment that they need in order to change their lives around? We have to look at the whole picture, and we have to encourage families, if you can't deal with your wayward child, to reach out for help before it's too late. We've buried numerous young people and treated many gunshot wounds of young people who were related to stolen cars all this year. And my hope was, and I hope that young people are watching this, my hope was that they would see some of the negative consequences that came as a result of young people being in stolen cars, and that they would change their behavior. But unfortunately, sometimes our young people, they're still developing, so they may look and think that it cannot happen to them. But it has happened to a lot of young people. Being arrested and being sentenced to juvenile hall, to juvenile hall, or resulting in injury or death. All of that has happened this year. And I think that we need to keep reminding our young people of that, but at the same time making sure that they understand there are resources out there. But there cannot be any excuses for a 12-year-old being in a stolen car at 11:45 at night.
Just a few questions for me. The press release said there were interviews for these juveniles. What did that look like? Did you gain any insight from speaking to these?
I'll turn it to Lieutenant Bello, but I'm sure he's not going to go into any details on an ongoing investigation. But
yeah, so typically anytime we arrest somebody on any sort of serious offense, typically felony level, things along those lines, we always seek to interview that person as to what their involvement or others' involvement in the crime is, or patterns or things along those lines. So that's all stuff that leads to future investigations or part of that investigation that I'm not in a position to disclose now, but at some point during the court process, because obviously if we did receive information from somebody, we don't want to publicize that we received that information as we try to move forward and make additional arrests or additional cases. So we're going to refrain from talking about what occurred in the interviews. But one of the things I did want to mention, the governor or the mayor had mentioned over 600 guns that we recovered this year. And 600 guns, frequently, a lot of times they've been with juveniles this year, and they've been involved in the stolen cars this year. And that's 40 minutes of pursuit for our officers. Just the other night, we had an officer fearing for his life at the end of a pursuit with 2 different firearms involved. And that was a short pursuit. So that 40 minutes, there's a huge danger to the entire community and to our officers that are out there, the sheriff's department, the deputies and the troopers that are out there. And this is just a testament to that. We see some of these different social media posts and some of these people that are out there talking about what are you doing, what are you doing, what are you doing. This is exactly what we're doing. Is we're out there. That's despite being almost 100 officers short right now. That's what our officers are doing. They're out there, going out there and arresting these kids. We've arrested, I think, over 200 people with this stolen Hyundai and Kia trend that's going on. Out there arresting people. We're out there getting over 600 guns out the street. We're out just, again, the other night, responding to shot spotter calls within seconds, getting into pursuits with guns involved. This 40-minute pursuit last night. That's what our officers are out there doing. While at the same time, there's a trial going on for one of our officers, one of our brothers, that was killed going out there chasing these murder suspects down. So every time you see one of those guns, 600 plus guns, there's a story that goes along with that gun, a story of danger that goes along with it. These hunts don't just walk over to us. They don't just come turned in at our headquarters desk. Here, I've got an illegal gun, arrest me. There's a story that goes along with those, and a story of the bravery and the heroism that our officers are out there doing on a daily basis. So I don't want that to be lost in what's going on, especially that these officers, this is going on, while simultaneously our officers are going to court every day and testifying in regards to somebody that killed one of our officers. So we got to keep the perspective on this as well.
And we also, for some folks who say, what are you doing? I say that they're risking their lives wrestling in the backyard, right? Chasing cars for 45 minutes, as the lieutenant said. That's what's going on. And I think that what I always tell people, we must have a proactive approach. And it means an all of community approach with everyone working together to help solve this problem. Because it's easy for me, if I was a citizen, just to sit down and say, oh, what are they doing? I'm on a beach somewhere tweeting that, hey, what are they doing? That's what's happening.
One of the solutions we've been reporting on is the JEDS program run through the Monroe County. Does that come into play for something like this? Will there be immediate intervention support services for these kids, their families, their parents?
Absolutely. The JEDS program, it absolutely comes in. And if you know, as the county executive often echoes, and we've said as it relates to this JEDS program, we're probably about 12 weeks into it, is that the recidivism rate for people that go through that program is less than 5%. So we know that works. And we also credited that with our decline that we've seen in car thefts over the last 6 weeks, right? We're not anywhere where we were at the peak. We are down significantly, and I credit that a lot to the JEDS program because we zeroed in on juveniles who were repeat offenders who were doing this on a regular basis. So we do need to be able to do that. And that's just stolen cars. But remember, it's a step up when you're robbing someone with a violent instrument. And that's what I think our families and young people have to understand. Stealing a car is bad. It gets even worse when you're still in that car and you're using a gun or a hammer or anything else to be able to do that. But yes, the JEDS program, we want to continue to use that. We think that it will be a model for the rest of the country, and we know that right now, we know that it's working. The state has highlighted it, and we highlighted it 2 weeks ago when the governor was here. That is a tool that is successful, and we think that we want to continue to see people highlight it, and we want to continue to use that as a tool along with everything else that we're doing.
Just
Isabel,
in terms of
and
the
then
overall, response, of the community you mentioned, there's a lot of criticism. I guess what would be your message to people that do you feel that Rochester's just lost hope, and in terms of righting the ship?
Yeah, no, I don't think that Rochester's lost hope. You have to remember that we are down double digits in homicides from year over year. In 2021, we saw 86 homicides in our community, and we have significantly decreased that along with the number of shootings. So we have not lost hope. But you also have to remember, you know why we haven't lost hope? Because I just left Illuminate, where we saw some of the great businesses in our community that are there. Why we aren't losing hope? Because we have hope coming right here at City Hall at 5 o'clock with the Pillars of Hope program, right? So I don't think that people have lost hope. I think that people are sometimes frustrated. I also think that you have to look at the whole panoramic view. I don't do social media like that because it's easy for any of us to comment and sit somewhere on social media and spout off our mouths, right? But obviously, we always say, what can we do to get better? And how can we better it by making sure that we talk about what we're doing on a regular basis, but also that we support our people in our violence prevention programs that are involved in helping to stop this, our men and women in uniform who are literally putting their lives on the line, literally putting their lives on the line every day to stop this stuff, and thank our partners, the U.S. Marshal's Office, the State Police, Monroe County Sheriff's Office, for all that they're doing to be able to help do this. But crime or destruction is extremely personal. So beyond the numbers, if you see the numbers and the numbers might be down, if your car window was just smashed, you don't want to hear the mayor talk about the numbers because something personal just happened to you. And all we can do is to try to go after those perpetrators and encourage people to speak up when you see that type of negative behavior happen. Because we should have no tolerance in our community for unnecessary lawlessness. And I will tell you that we don't, and we will continue to pursue it. Wherever we see it, And more importantly, we have a plan to fix it, and that's what we're going to continue to work that plan.
What can you guys say about the recent smash and grabs?
Yeah, I think that as it was said, we always are looking to try to connect the dots. My suspicion is that these are young people that are involved in negative behavior. Oftentimes, they're not even taking anything. They're just doing it just because. Taking a hammer or a golf club and just smashing windows just to do it. And we need to make sure that we continue to go after those individuals. I think last night was us pursuing those types of individuals. Those individuals that we arrested, the 6, they had a hammer on them. So we need to continue, and we will continue to do that. But a lot of the individuals doing that it's a cowardly act, and it's also an act in which people are not realizing the impact that they're having on families and in the community. You can't drive with broken windows. So it's a major issue that we continue to pursue and take care of.